The sermon text for this morning is taken from the gospel lesson that I just read. Now, something I want you to think about as we go through the sermon this morning is what criteria, what things are part of the basis for any decision that you make, of how you get to that decision. What do you do to process to get to those decision type things? I want you to think about that as we go through the sermon. A group of friends went deer hunting. And you know, this is in honor of deer hunting because it starts in October and November, and it will be a big income boost for our area and also for our members who have hunters. God bless you. The thing that I wanted to say about it is that these guys went hunting, and they separated into pairs. And that night, one hunter returned alone, staggering under the weight of an 8-point buck. The other hunters asked, "Where's Harry?" The lone hunter replied, "Oh, Harry fainted a couple of miles up on the trail." And the others couldn't believe it. "You mean you left him there lying on that trail and you carried that deer home instead?" The man answered, "Yes, it was definitely a tough call. But I figured no one was going to steal Harry." Now you understand why I was asking, what are the things involved in making a decision? Now, to this deer hunter, it was simply a matter of priorities, wasn't it? And one of the secrets of success in life is to have your priorities in order. So you know what's first, what's second with that. But that goes back to how you make decisions and what is important and how you go about doing those kind of things. Jesus and his disciples had just arrived in Capernaum in our gospel today. And when they were settled in, Jesus asked them, "What were you arguing about on the road?" Suddenly, it got very, very quiet. Why? Because the disciples were embarrassed. They had been arguing about who was the greatest. And they were arguing over who was the number one. How is it that this argument seemed perfectly reasonable at the time that they were talking and important to the disciples who were making the arguments until they had to say it before Jesus? Isn't that interesting? How things that we do on earth seem to be just right, spot on, until we lay them in the lap of Jesus, and then they fall apart. Because we've forgotten to prioritize as Jesus would want us to prioritize. Suddenly, the disciples saw it for what it really was: simple, petty pride. No wonder they were embarrassed. No wonder they didn't want to tell Jesus what they were arguing about. So Jesus called the 12 and said to them, and I quote, "If anyone wants to be first, he shall be last of all and the servant of all." And taking a child, he set him before them, and taking him into his arms, he said to them, "Whoever receives a child like this is in my name receives me. And whoever receives me does not receive me, but the one who sent me." Now, if you are like many people in the world, in our society today, you have a strong desire to succeed in your chosen career, or at home, or whatever you do. I don't think anyone here likes to be a failure, do you? "Oh, right, I'm number 12,002. No, we want to be number one. We want to be the best we can be. We want to have things go the way we think they should go. Never before have we been in a generation, however, to whom success is so important. It seems like every time I turn on the television news, every time I turn around and read something, it's all about how to be number one, how to be the best of the best. We want to be top of that pyramid. I think everybody really does. We want to be number one. And there's really nothing wrong with that. Please hear it. I was reading recently about a young woman who was from New York and was dreaming about being a new movie star. So she moved to Hollywood, and she started studying acting, and she started pounding the pavement looking for jobs. This young actress claimed to be fresh off the farms of Montana, even though she wasn't. Maybe this farm girl turned starlet angel would work for her, I guess she was thinking. She was pretty, but she was not glamorous. She couldn't sing. She couldn't dance that well. She was energetic and she was funny, but at that time, female comedians were not very popular. One of her colleagues even advised her, say, honey, go back to Montana and just be a happy cowgirl. But that's not what this young woman did. This young woman wanted to succeed and wanted to be the best that she could possibly be. And she became one of the funniest women in television. And she went on to become one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. Anybody have an idea who I'm talking about?
Lucy.
I can't hear all those answers, but they sound good to me. Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball. There's nothing wrong with wanting to be successful. In fact, that's what makes this world work the best, is if we try to do the best that we possibly can at whatever we do. Please hear this. Personal ambition is a gift of God that has been bestowed upon us and caused us to do our best. For instance, when I have surgery, I want a doctor who is dedicated to being the very best doctor in the town. When I go to a restaurant, I want to make sure that the chef that I am going to be having the food from is the very best chef in town. When I have my car repaired, I certainly don't want the one who failed mechanics. I want someone who is the best mechanic working on my car. There's nothing wrong with being number one. There's nothing wrong with striving to be there. Striving to be number one, to be healthy, as long as we are able to put things into the proper perspectives. Working isn't everything. We all know that. Neither is it the only thing. In fact, being number one can cost you so much in your life if you don't watch out. Because striving to be number one and being all that that means can take certain things away from you. And your life can take a different direction if you're not careful. And I think that's sort of what Jesus was seeing in our text. The disciples were deciding who was number one, who was the best, who was going on with that. And he wanted them to have their priorities straight. They have their heads on right, so to speak, and then they could think. Notice that Jesus didn't scold the disciples for wanting to be number one. What he tried to do was help them to put what they were thinking and what they were going through into the proper perspective. Some anonymous writer put it this way. Imagine that life is a game in which you're juggling 5 different balls. And you're juggling them in the air. Okay? You name one ball work. You name another family, friends, health, and faith. So you name them work, family, health, friends, faith. And you're keeping all of them juggling in the air like you always do on your daily lives. And you're juggling away and you're doing just fine and you're going along really well. But sooner or later you're going to drop one. And you will soon understand that the one that is out of rubber needs to be worked. Because it can bounce back at you. Because if you drop it, it will bounce, that rubber ball. But the other 4 balls of family, health, friends, and faith are made out of glass. And if you take glass and drop it, what's going to happen? Depending on what it hits, it's either going to be stuck, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered. But the point is that if you drop one of those 4 things out of your life, things are going to be shattered. Work can always bounce back. You can always go with that, right? But the other 4 things are so critical for making a perfect relationship and having your priorities straight. So if you were bouncing those balls, jumping around and the work ball runs and you go after the work ball and the other 4 fall to the floor, great. What does that do for your life? It's a matter of taking things and putting them in proper priorities. For me, this is a very powerful imagery. Because work is a rubber ball. But all of the things that are important to me in my life, such as my family, my health, my friends, and my faith, are made out of glass. And I watch them very carefully. And I take care of them very carefully. And I juggle them so that everything is in there in my life in the proper perspective. If you neglect one of those four, what happens? Or if you take all five, if you neglect one of them, what's going to happen? Well, if you neglect your work, you're not going to have any money. You're not going to be able to do anything. If you neglect your friends, what's going to happen? If you neglect your family, what's going to happen? And here's the big one for me right now. If you neglect thy assignment for church, what's going to happen to thy Lutheran church? No matter what age we are, no matter how much experience we have in the church still needs you. And your faith is important. Growing with Jesus every single time you get a chance is so critical. And we all need to jump in there, no matter how we're juggling all these balls and how one ball seems to be so much harder to keep up there or not than juggling in the others. We have to let go of one. And I hope you let go of the rubber one that can bounce back. And you can get going again with that. There are some things in life that we cannot buy, and we cannot borrow. I cannot buy a family. Oh, I can buy some friends, but how well would that work for me? Friends is a relationship that comes between two people out of Christian love. Health? I'd love to buy you better health. I'd love to get rid of some of these joint problems I'm having right now. I can get a new joint, but I still have the problems. You see what I'm getting at? All of us are under pressure to succeed in life. All of us are under pressure to take those 5 balls and try to find out which is important. And sometimes it gets out of whack and we say, oh, work is so important. I've got to do this. I can't go to Bible study. I can't come to Sunday school. I can't come to worship. I've got to get all of these other things in order. But then Jesus took the disciples aside and said, what? Let's talk about this. Let's see what is really important. Let's put this all in the proper perspective. Putting things in the proper perspective is critical right now. For this church, your leadership needs to put things in the proper perspective. For the groups and organizations, they need to put everything in the proper perspective. Our community of Fredericksburg needs to do the same, put things in the proper perspective and the way. If we can do that, and we follow our leader, Jesus Christ, it is my prayer that things will flow well. And that juggling those 4 or 5 balls is not going to be a problem. But it's going to be fun to do. Because then I can do all of them at the same time. Work is a rubber ball. If you drop it, it will bounce back. The other 4 balls, family, health, friends, and faith, are made of glass. If you drop one of these, you will be in trouble because the glass balls will be scuffed, marked, nicked, damaged, or even shattered, and cannot sometimes be put back together. They will, however, whatever you do, they will never be the same. So take care of that. Prioritize so where all of them are in the right care in your life. May God be with you as you think about how you make decisions, and you then put it into the lap of Jesus and say, okay, Jesus, is this right? And if you do it in the eyes of Jesus, no matter what kind of things will happen with you then. But most importantly, God will be with you as you make your decisions if you ask Him to go along for the journey. So ask God to go with you. Ask God to help you, and He will. May God be with you as you prioritize in your own